So after the 1996 Nader presidential campaign, which was our first presidential campaign, at that time we didn't yet have a fully functional national party. We had a lot of local green groups that were networking around the country, but a whole group of us got together in Middleburg, West Virginia, and we founded what at that time was called the Association of State Green Parties, and which ultimately became the Green Party of the United States, which of course then nominated Jill as our presidential campaign last year. And that meeting brought together a lot of really talented, forward-thinking people from around the country who hadn't really met beforehand, people who were green in a green movement sense, but also saw the need for electoral politics to represent that. And at that meeting, at this really cool old house out in the countryside, there was this young green from Madison, Wisconsin, who had come painfully close to winning, I believe it was a county supervisor seat by 3 or 4 votes. And I remember being impressed about how both polished and functional he was, but how he still held on to a really transformative vision of our society. And that person is our next speaker, Ben Manski. And Ben, I don't know, you'll tell us how young you were at the time, but this was mostly a room of a lot older people, and Ben held his own there, went on to become a co-chair of our national party, came very close to winning a state assembly seat in Wisconsin, and then was Jill's campaign manager. So for our next plenary session, please give a warm welcome to Ben Manski. Was that great?
I think so. And I want people to know that Mike Feinstein, when he was mayor of Santa Monica, came out to Madison, Wisconsin, marched with us as we were protesting the corporate takeover of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. And he has been a friend to the Wisconsin Greens for many years. You want me to use both mics? All right, I will do that. So he's been a friend to the Wisconsin Greens for many years, and I really want to thank you for your support. And it's important to recognize that Mike Feinstein, as mayor, talking with Green City Council members in places like Madison and Milwaukee and the Twin Cities and Boston and other parts of the country, has been an important part of the success of the Greens over the years. That kind of solidarity between Green elected officials and Green activists is really where our strength currently is. And the introduction he gave in some ways was really appropriate to what I want to address in a limited amount of time today, which is that I have been a member of the Green Party for many years. When I was in high school, a number of my friends decided we needed an environmental organization. And being student activists coming on the 20th anniversary of Earth Day, we came up with an acronym that we thought really captured the situation. Student Environmental Intervention for a Green Earth. How's that sound? Yeah. Siege. Yeah, we're serious. Yeah, Earth is under siege. And some college students at the University of Wisconsin heard about this and reached out and invited us to a campus party with the UW Greens. And we all went to this campus party. We thought, wow, we're at a campus party with all these college students. And that's when I joined the Greens. And I had the opportunity now, going on 23 years, to have grown up at least as an adult in the Green Party, and to see the party move forward at certain periods of time, and then have setbacks, and then put itself back together again and move forward. And it really is sort of like the ebbing and flowing of the tide, except for overall, we have been moving forward. And what I want to recognize right now is that we are in a period where the Greens have great opportunity to grow, to succeed as we never have before. It reminds me a lot of the period in the late 1990s, in which we had a Democratic president and a Republican Congress, and you had many people who had put their hopes in that president who finally came to recognize that they needed an independent alternative, an independent voice. Now, I want to say something else about the 1990s. Throughout the 1990s, it was not clear that the Green Party was going to become that independent electoral voice. There were other efforts to build independent progressive parties in the U.S. in the 1990s. I joined them. Probably some people in this room were active in these parties. The New Party, the Labor Party, they were better funded than the Greens. They had institutional support, millions of dollars. But the Greens, not the New Party, not the Labor Party, are not only still here, but we are the National Progressive Party, the opposition party, the Revolutionary Party in the United States when you go to vote today. And that is not by happenstance, in my opinion. You know, I do many things, just like everybody in this room has various things that we specialize in. One of them is I'm a sociologist. I am a scholar of social movements. And there are things about the Greens that are unique. One of them is that we are a values-based party. We have our 10 key values, right? What are our 10 key values? Nonviolence. Social justice. Ecological wisdom.
Feminism or equality.
Feminism or gender equality. Grassroots democracy and diversity. Future focus. Okay, it is almost always one of the later key values that comes out, but in this case, I think it's incredibly important. Future focus is one of our 10 key values. And that's not a coincidence that the Greens have always been focused on the future. And being future focused can have benefits. It can have benefits because when things get bad, you may have been right in predicting that they were going to get bad in certain ways, and you may have some answers for people. But you may not only have answers in terms of the policies that have to be implemented to address the problems that we're facing. You may have answers that actually get at the root causes of the problem. And so the Greens, as a future-focused party founded in the 1980s here in the United States and North America and inspired by efforts internationally that came out of the 1970s in Germany and Kenya and New Zealand, have been looking forward for many years. And we have been talking about climate crisis, austerity, the corporate takeover of our society, the corporatization of everyday life, from our schools to our prisons, to our welfare system, to our military, with more women and men serving in private military companies overseas than are members of the U.S. Armed Forces in Iraq and Afghanistan. The corporatization of the human genome, of the genetic code, the basis of life. The corporatization of our law, with consumers being forced into corporate courts. All those agreements we sign, right? Every aspect of life has been subject to corporatization. The Greens have been taking on these problems for many years. And now we are in a moment, today we are in a moment in which the green analysis is looked for. The understanding that we embody, especially ecological wisdom, is looked for. And while there are others, there are other parties, there are other people who engage in politics who are now finally attempting to find words to describe not only the problems and solutions, they don't really get it. They don't really get it. So this is our moment. This is our opportunity. And I would suggest to you that the Greens, having gone through a long period of movement building and development, I mean, for any frustration anybody in this room may feel about the functionality of the Green Party today, let me tell you, it was much worse before. It was much harder before. And things are much better today, right? They are much better today. And they're better because, not only because people are ready for Greens to serve in elective office and they're ready to vote for Greens as they never have been before, but also because we have experience, we have institutional knowledge. You know, I run into this a lot. I run into people on the left who say, you know, yeah, I'm willing to support the Green Party, but we really need a strong, independent, progressive party. And you know, maybe the Greens can become part of that. And we had some of those conversations this past year with a gentleman who I greatly respect, the former mayor of Salt Lake City, Rocky Anderson, great progressive voice, said, I'm going to form a party and the Joins can green it. The Greens can join it. Had a long day. I think I'm doing all right, but if I slip up, you feel free to let me know. The Greens can join it. But the thing is that these people don't realize how difficult it is, right? They don't have the experience of building an independent political party in this electoral system. It's hard work, right? It's hard work, and it requires dedication, it requires a commitment to the long term, and I think that one of the things that has kept us going is, again, that green analysis, the green values, and the idea that we need to fundamentally transform not only our politics, but our economy and our culture and our law, right? The Greens are, in essence, a revolutionary party operating within an electoral arena, and that is not an easy thing to do, right? But we have some practice with it. We have some practice with getting people on the ballot. We have some practice with litigating. We have some practice with what to do when you're shut out of the debates. We have some practice with how do you convince voters who were born into other political parties to try something new. And we are in a moment that is opportune. I want to talk a little bit about Green Party strategy moving forward. Some of the things I say may or may not be new to you. There is a lineage to independent politics in this country that we are a part of, right? And we can look at that history and take some lessons from it and see what worked and what didn't work so well. When people were trying to build political parties that would allow social movements to also be independent. That's the job of an independent party in the abstract, whether it's called the Labor Party or the Green Party, the Progressive Party, or the Women's Party, whatever the party is, the job of an independent political party is to liberate social movements so they can be independent too. Because as I think we've all seen, what ends up happening when you have just two parties that are established and enshrined in law and where the courts protect them from challenge, like the Democrats and Republicans, that social movements end up spending more time trying to protect the people in power than the people in power try to protect the people who put them there. In other words, I believe, and I think Greens believe, and anybody who believes in independent politics believes, that the function of parties should be to serve people, not to have, the function of parties should be to serve social movements, not to have social movements serve them, right? The problem that we see in the student movement and the labor movement, the environmental movement today, and civil rights movement, so many areas of the larger progressive movement, is that people leave their jobs at the Sierra Club or at the, as president of a union, and then they go to work for the people they were lobbying. And then when that person loses office or moves on, they leave their job as an aide and they go back to working in the student movement or the labor movement and so on, right? So one of our responsibilities as an independent progressive party in the American tradition is to liberate social movements. There are other parties that have done this throughout American history. And I want to recognize that the Greens in the US are both inspired by Greens in other parts of the world, but also uniquely American. There is some American exceptionalism here, okay? We're inspired by the success of Greens in other parts of the world, but we are actually literally the descendants of the people who built the Progressive Party, the Socialist Party, the Communist Party, the American Labor Party, the Farm Labor Party, the Republican Party, back when it was a radical party that was attacked for its communistic values of free love and free women, okay? And you can trace that history. In my state of Wisconsin, there's an incredible history. The people who were in the political ascendancy at the time that Wisconsin became a state had a political fight with Virginians, right? There were a lot of Virginians who came in early on. Henry Dodge, get out of Dodge, that's that guy, right? Is Virginian, okay? He was the first territorial governor, but he ended up moving west. Why? Because other people came in, Yankees from New England and New York, Liberty Party men and women, Free Soil Party activists, right? And they were joined by exiles from the revolutions of 1848, the 48ers, right? Karl Schurz, president of the German Commune, settled in Wisconsin. Okay? And they got together and they got along. And they founded a party called the Republican Party in 1854. They did advocate for the right to vote for immigrants, for respecting the treaties, for abolition of slavery, certainly, for the rights of labor, for so much more. And then when the Republican Party had been co-opted by those East Coast industrialists, and also accomplished some things along the way, by the way, that wing of the Republican Party joined in forming the Progressive Party and the Socialist Party. And guess what? In Wisconsin today, the people who founded the Wisconsin Greens in the early 1980s, some of those people had been members of the Progressive Party. When we had the National Green Party Convention in Milwaukee in 2004, some of you may remember that our honorary chairman was Frank Zeidler, the last socialist mayor of Milwaukee, right? So why do I sort of tie us in there to that history? Well, first of all, let's recognize that we are not just sort of, the Greens didn't just spring up, that we do have deep roots in the history of this country, and those roots extend to every liberation movement that has changed this country for the better. And that there are lessons from those movements. The Socialist Party, for example, had a strategy which today would be characterized as moving from strength to strength. The Socialist Party built up citadels where the Socialist Party had power in the teens and the 20s and even into the 50s, even through the McCarthy era. The Socialist Party ran Pittsburgh, Milwaukee, Minneapolis, Boston, Seattle, St. Louis, Cincinnati, and on and on. And they did that by taking on the party machine. And in some ways, the obstacles they had at the ballot box in those local elections were greater than the obstacles we face today. In some ways, they had it easier, right? But it was hard. I'll tell you that. It was very hard. Many of them went to prison, went to jail. Their strategy involved winning elections at the local level and building a national and an international resistance on the basis of those local victories. Okay? That's what we have the opportunity to do now. We are entering a green moment in which we can move from several hundred Greens serving an elective office across the country, some mayors, city council people in a few major cities, to in 5 years, Greens holding the mayorships and the city council majorities in 5 medium to large cities around the country. Minneapolis, St. Paul, both of those cities could go green. Seattle, Portland, Oregon, San Francisco, we came so close, right? Madison, Wisconsin, Milwaukee, Boston. There are many cities around the country where we have the capacity to do that. And as we do that, we'll be able to show people what happens when you elect Greens to office and give them governing power, right? As they have done, frankly, in Brazil and in Germany and increasingly in Scotland and the United Kingdom. We have the ability to have a process that takes us from here to there. I'm going to check for the time here. Normally in this talk, I would talk about the nature of the crisis we face, but we had an excellent exposition on that today. What I want to convey to you in this brief period of time is that we're ready for this moment. You're ready for this moment. The campaign schools have been happening around the country following the 2012 election have brought together literally hundreds of activists and people who are new to the Green Party, people who have been at it for a long time. There are incredible people who are running for office right now. Some of them have already won office since we began this process. I want to say especially to those who are maybe in their early 20s and late 20s today, you have a base to build on. You're not starting from scratch. You also have some really serious challenges, and ain't nobody gonna solve it but you. And what I would like to do at this point is to call up 3 people and turn this plenary into a discussion. And I specifically want to ask Ruskell Kayang, who is a Green elected official, a member of the Board of Trustees at Napa Community College. I have to say, our Green elected officials are the best elected officials money can't buy. I want to call up Alex Shantz. Where's Alex? Also from Napa, who is also on staff with Jill Stein for president here in California. And it's been my honor to get to meet you and get to know you a little better, Alex. And June Brashers, who had played a pivotal role in putting this together.
Can we look at the camera now and then, because we're talking?
Yeah, I'm actually gonna focus on folks here, just because you took the time to take the day to be here with us. So what we're gonna do is a session that looks at the fact that we are a party that is different from the other political parties in one key way. And the fact that we are different in that key aspect creates a very special set of problems for us, right? And I'm going to frame this question, and I'm going to give each of you an opportunity to respond to it. We're going to take 2 to 3 minutes each. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to take 5 people from among all of you. You give your questions or comments in response. And we're going to go back and forth like this. And the times that we've done this in New York, Minnesota, it was great. I'm looking forward to this conversation. So, you ready? Yeah. All right. It's not quite a game show, but treat it that way. So, what is a political party? What is a political party? I would suggest to you that a political party is not one thing, but is a series of things. There are a number of different aspects to political parties in the United States. There is the political party at the ballot box. That is the political party that shows up on election day, the voters. It is also the political party that is the people who run elections. In the case of the Democrats and Republicans, that political party is a multi-billion-dollar industry. But it is a set of people who have a particular set of values that are different than some of the other aspects of the political party. There's the political party at elections, okay? There's the political party in government. It's different. Yes, elected officials run for office, but guess what? When they get into office, you know who they're talking to most of the time? They're talking to each other. They're talking to staff. That is true not only of Democrats and Republicans, it's true of Greens. They're doing their jobs. And in my experience, the political party in government is sometimes better than the political party in elections. I find Democratic elected officials and Republican elected officials much easier to deal with than the political operators that run their campaigns. Okay? They have different sets of interests. This is true for Greens as well. Our elected officials, where we have had success, where Greens win local office, our elected officials spend a lot of time in committee meetings, days of committee meetings every week, votes, keeping up with things, doing their job. Okay? Third, there is the political party as a tribe. Political parties are tribes. People are born into political parties. This is true not only of the Ds and the Rs, it is now true of the Green Party. And that's a good thing for us. There are activists that I know in different parts of the country, including, I'll give you one that bear this out. One young woman who is active with the Four Lakes Green Party in Madison, Wisconsin. Her parents were co-founders of the D.C. statehood Green Party. I met her when she lived in D.C. Now she's involved in Madison. She's in her 20s, right? You're born into these parties. They're parties that represent our values. It's a sense of identity, for better and for worse. Somebody in the last workshop that I was involved in was talking about the Green Bay Packers and why don't the Greens in Wisconsin make more use of the Green Bay Packers? And he's right. I mean, there is a tribalism to this. It's a little bit like sports. And in the worst of times, what it is my team's, you know, I'm going for my team, the other team going down, right? And even the Greens, we have aspects to this too, right? There is also the party in the streets. And this is how we are different from the Democrats and the Republicans, and for the most part, from the Libertarians as well. We are a party of the streets. We are a social movement party that is organizing protests, that is organizing community gardens, that is pushing forward the policy agenda, that is in the leadership of some movements in this country. The anti-war movement, if you were to go around and identify who are the 20 top anti-war leaders in the United States over the last 15 years, almost to a last one, they are Greens, right? Certainly true of the movement around constitutional reform, move to amend, other movements. We are a party of the streets. So that's my frame up, and this is where I'm going to lead to you guys. This causes some special challenges for us. Because when you are a party of the streets, and you are engaged in elections, in an electoral arena that was designed to prevent you from succeeding. We have election laws that were written to keep the Communist Party and the Socialist Party out of office in the 1940s and the 1950s. When you were a party of the streets and you're dealing with an electoral arena that is designed to prevent you from succeeding, when you were a party of the streets and you actually succeed anyway and you elect people to office, and Russ Gall's there and he's spending a lot of time with the other trustees, but he's also a movement guy, that creates some unique challenges for you, right? How do we overcome them? I want us to have this discussion because until we actually succeed in addressing this tension in our work, it will be very difficult for us to overcome this challenge and make it into something that fuels us. So let's turn it over to Alex here.
Thank you. So there wasn't a specific question, but I guess in general, you want me to talk about some of the challenges that Greens.
If you want to stand up, maybe.
Sure. Yeah. So I guess in general, what I'm doing is I'm talking about. Excuse me. Yes. Got it. Thank you.
Right.
So I guess what I'm supposed
Al.
to be doing in general is discussing some of the unique challenges that Greens face, as Ben Manski said, not only as a political party that's trying to get candidates elected into office, but also as a party in the streets. One thing I should probably mention that wasn't brought out during my introduction is I also served as president of the Associated Students of Napa Valley College a few years ago, and so that was a governing role. There is the Associated Students Act. It actually is a real government that's mentioned in state ed code, and there's a shared governance process that the Student Senate is involved with, along with the other constituent groups on campus. So I did have a role in governing. I guess one of the things I tried to do when I was president is when I would talk about issues, I would try to frame issues in a way that were universal. So just, for example, when I was talking about fee increases and tuition increases, one of the things I would openly advocate for was how we needed to restore the master plan for higher education in California, and we needed community colleges to be free, once again, as they had been. And the way I would basically frame that is that as a student leader, as a student advocate, I really had an obligation to put that demand forward, since that demand is in the absolute best interest of the students that I'm supposed to be representing. Another issue that I worked quite a bit on campus were sort of diversity issues in general. And I was really involved with supporting the efforts of undocumented students and their allies. This was during a time when it was the lame duck session in Congress, and some of the dreamers throughout the country were really trying to put pressure on Congress to pass the DREAM Act. So Napa Valley College was really involved with that. There were various student groups that got together and formed a coalition. And what they organized was what they called a Week of Dreams. So it was a series of actions on campus where they did different things like they had a silent march. They had a chalk day where they were just writing messages with chalk on the ground. And sort of the thing that it all kind of led up to was this big thing that we called a die-in, which basically there were a lot of students who showed up, obviously a lot of Latino students, dressed up in the graduation gowns, and basically just, like 20 or 30 of us just fell on the ground like we were dead to sort of symbolize how the dreams of many undocumented students who are trying to get an education, are basically dying as well. So, and as president at the time, what I would say is, I have an obligation as president of the Associated Students of Napa Valley College, representing all students on campus, to represent undocumented students and to advocate for their rights, because that's a student demographic that exists, and therefore I have an obligation to advocate for them. So I sort of framing issues that way. So instead of there's still going to be radical demands, but you're able to frame it in a way where this is just what I anyone in this position should be doing, basically. So those are a few initial thoughts. I'm going to go ahead and give the mic over to Ruskell.
And if I could just do a follow-up
Yeah, go
here
ahead.
just to ask, and you can hold on to that because I've got a mic over
yeah,
here.
Yeah.
Were you criticized for participating in these protests and for playing a role as an elected official?
Well, so actually, it was funny. There was a clip, a video clip that made its way up on YouTube, and some right-wing blogs found it, and it's really bizarre because it just is this random protest at Napa Valley College, and it got picked up from one blog, and I guess the way that they're networked, ended up on hundreds of others. So I think part of the way I was able to protect myself from that kind of criticism is, once again, this was done in coalition with other student representatives. So I don't recall getting no one really came to my face and criticized me. But one of the ways I was able to position myself is, if I did face that criticism, what I would say is, well, first of all, undocumented students are part of our student population, so I have an obligation as president of the Association of Students to stand up for them. But this is also being supported by dozens of other student organizations. So that's.
And I liked what you said, where you said these are still radical demands, but you're making them. I don't know if you used the word mainstream or majoritarian, but that's sort of how I interpreted what you said. Is that's part of the job of being a Green in office, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
As you mentioned earlier, can you hear me? Can you guys hear me?
It might help for you. It'll help you if you stand up. Yeah.
All right.
There we go.
Okay. Well, thank you guys for coming out today. Appreciate your time today. Other than serving on the Napa Valley College Board of Trustees, before I served on it, I served on the City of Vallejo Youth Commission for approximately 2 years. And interestingly enough, that commission was created by creating city policy and revising it. We used to have a youth commission that was just focused on activities, but it wasn't focused on giving young people a voice on policies and projects that the City of Vallejo was considering. So one day, I remember this vividly, I went to Vice Mayor Stephanie Gomes at the time, and we looked at other city youth commissions, such as San Francisco and Seattle, brought it to the city council. Oh yeah, it was a challenge to get them to agree, but thankfully it got passed, and we got the commission. We got recruitment of young people on there as young as 12, even from the middle schools. That's so cool. Yeah, and once they got appointed, and interesting enough, the council appointed me just to help with the commission get it started. We did some interesting things. For example, we reviewed the City of Vallejo downtown specific plan of arts and entertainment. There was an proposed amendment to that plan to allow more bars and nightclubs in downtown Vallejo. The Youth Commission felt that we wanted something family-friendly, youth-friendly, so they proposed policy recommendations to encourage more small businesses, such as youth art galleries, youth retail to be family-friendly. And interesting enough, it did get to the city council. They did incorporate in their final decision. So yes, their voice was heard. It did pass. Interesting thing is a mural project. Yeah, there was challenges of working with the property owner of getting a blank wall on the side of a dilapidated building and turn it into a beautiful mural. After through much bureaucracy, we pulled it off, and with zero money. So it's pretty much donations. We didn't use any taxpayer dollars to do this. We just that spirit of we gotta do it. And it took us just 3 months. 3 months just to get it done. So that's one of the things I like to talk about.
Have you, I mean, I'm just thinking in terms of our format here. So you're an elected official now, right? And that's a nonpartisan office, probably?
It's a nonpartisan office.
And do people know that you are a Green on the?
Yes.
So talk about that experience.
They're cool. I could work with anyone from any ideology, background, spectrum. Any policy proposal that comes up to our board, I always disseminate it with the constituents, citizens, and students. I want their feedback, not my opinion. I want their feedback, and how I approach issues. I study all sides of issues, as Stephanie Gomes taught me. Great mentor of mine. Studied all sides of issues and make an informed decision and be thoughtful about it. So that's what I did, and it has turned out rewarding. Even though I'm registered green, haven't got any controversy or criticism about it.
Right.
It's pretty much, people like my leadership, I guess.
Right. Excellent. Oh, thank you. I have to meet the Stephanie Gomes person. Awesome. I just want to recognize something I take out of your comments there, Ruskell, which is that there you have an example of Greens in government, right? You have a collegial relationship, it sounds like, with the other trustees.
Yeah.
And in other settings, you may not, right? But there is something that happens there in that process. So, excellent. Thanks for your service.
Thank you.
So, yeah, it's great to follow on them and to hear about the great work they're doing as Greens in governing bodies, because I think it's really important that they're really delivering something to the community. And, we've talked about this tension between the movement and then the party, and as Ben talked earlier, that the party is really here to serve the movement, to liberate these social movements, to get their agenda delivered to the people. That's really what we're for. And it's not the other way around. The movement's not there to serve the party. And sometimes we'll hear Greens commiserating, there's that group, and they should really be green. Because we know that our values, we articulate a set of values that are stronger on their position than maybe what the electeds are doing. But if we're going to ask maybe some leadership in that movement or in that group to become Greens and work with us, we have to be realistic about are we going to be able to deliver something for that movement and help them move forward. If they feel that it's a risk and there isn't a good chance that we're going to be able to deliver something, they're going to be reluctant to make that step into being a Green. And so where I think we have to really plan strategies of taking advantage of these local offices that are available to us, getting people in place, and delivering for people and showing that to people. I mean, we should all be helping share the stories of what our Greens are delivering. So if either you're in office or you're thinking about running for office, I think it's good to pick an issue where you can deliver something, where you can point to it. So that when you're in office, it'll be easy for people to see. With Alex, we heard about how he's really working for student and immigrant rights, and he can really point to what he's doing around that, and Ruskell around, the benefits for the community and youth and all, and they're doing so much. Sometimes it's like they're in there doing the good job day in and day out. That's important, but it's also good to be able to help articulate to people, and highlight some of the things that are being delivered. And, just like an example on a small level, say there is a group trying to get a community garden, like Ben mentioned. If they're real close to getting that garden in place with their local electeds, and you want the leadership of that to suddenly become a Green, and that might cost them that garden, that's probably not going to happen. But if you're involved day one in getting that garden as Greens, and the leadership gets that garden for the community, then you've got a Green that's delivering it, or you're in at the ground level of making that happen as Greens instead of asking the people that are making things happen to become Greens. And I think we really have to realize the realities of that and get more serious about, if we're thinking about running, what is the issue you're going to deliver besides educating? Because it's really a partnership of the broad issues we expose maybe when we run our presidential and our governors and those that sort of educate about the whole party and talk about those big issues. But then what are you going to deliver? We've got to have that partnership of more being delivered on the local level. And where it is being delivered, sharing those stories and letting people know that it's being delivered. So if you're not a candidate, I mean, I'm not a candidate. I'm a behind-the-scenes person. I'm wearing the T-shirt, you know. I'm here with the guys in the suits, and we've got a lot of women in suits here, too, that are candidates, and that's why I feel good about that. But I'm a background person, and so, you know, there's a big role for a lot of us in the background to be getting the stories out, you know, making sure that if you're on the social media, that you're sharing where those wins are happening. But I think we have to do a lot more planning about picking our races and picking our candidacies. You know, maybe we're not all, I'm not, you know, maybe we're not all candidates. If you've run a few times and you're not getting traction, think about what is the deliverable that could happen in your community that people are striving for, and if they actually had someone win, could be delivered. And what's the best person in your community to, you know, partner with to move that campaign forward as Greens together? And, you know, I'm a bit older. Look at the young people that you can support, that you can mentor, that you can hold up, rather than just putting ourselves out in front. Oh, I've learned so much, I'm going to be out front. Who can we support that's coming up that's already, you know, networking among younger people? So those are kind of the thoughts I just wanted to add.
Excellent. All right, thank you to our response panelists. And now, really appreciate each of you and your comments, and hope that this provokes some thinking among everybody here. And I see attentive faces. So given that most of you are probably not students right now, you don't have practice faking it. I will be a student again soon, so I have to get my practice going again. Let's take 5 people from among all of you and see what kinds of thoughts about the unique challenges of being Greens, in particular, in this electoral arena, in this governing arena, poses for us and how we can overcome them. Who's my first volunteer? And we got 1 in the back, and then 2, 3. Okay, we'll start there. So I'm going to go back over here. I don't know if it was Phil Donahue who pioneered this. So what is your question or comment? I'll just hold on to it.
Okay. Thank you, Phil.
You bet.
And sorry about...
Phil's a good Green, too, yeah.
I think as someone who's approached the Green Party in probably the past 12 months via the internet, and I'm not a big user of the internet. I'm more of a people person, which I think politics is all about. But I've attempted to sort of get involved, or at least get some sort of traction and response back. Unfortunately, I haven't had any. So communication is everything in this business, in the political business anyway. And if you're failing to reach those that are attempting to reach you at this critical transition stage, then you're failing at step 1.
Absolutely.
Would be the first point. The second point, obviously, is that as you gain some momentum, and obviously, I mean, this isn't just happening in the US, it's also happening in the UK right now. And they've got the same problem. It's ironic that, I mean, I'm originally from the UK, but I'm a dual citizen of both countries, and I've run for office the first time in the US. But I've got connections to people in politics in the UK, but you've got the same dynamics going on, where you've got the Labour and the Conservative parties both actually becoming one. And you've got a Republican and Democratic system that's become one. So the both nations and both peoples are crying out for an alternative that's going to deliver on its promises and get us off this sort of this race to the end of going over the edge of the cliff by the end of the century. So for that to happen, obviously, a third-party alternative, and there's been a moderate success in the UK. Obviously, in the UK system, they had the Liberal Dem coalition with the Conservatives, which has turned out to be a complete failure. And we here have never had that, but obviously the Greens are emerging as a viable alternative. But you know, your biggest challenge, I think, is going to be not only making that connection to people like me or others who want to get involved and are willing to run and stick their neck out there, which I'm willing to do. But it's also obviously, you know, how do you make yourselves credible to a very ignorant voting public. I mean, we've got a huge dumbed-down society in this country for various reasons, but their political education is weak at best. So overcoming the hurdles of not being taken seriously, and how you present yourself as a group as being a viable alternative is going to be a massive challenge. And how do you attract those that have influence and power, whether it be through money or political or corporate influence, and who are also looking, because they're in the system. I work for one of the largest banking organizations in the country, but I'm not sort of their.
You're not running it.
They knew what I was up to. They probably kicked me out, but no, there are people like me that want to get involved, and we need to be able to get people like me involved so that we can sort of polish the edges, so to speak, so that it's all about selling something, and obviously, and having people that not only understand and can communicate the message, but believe in the message and won't be corrupted. I mean, we've talked about the president who seems to be corrupted. I mean, if you look in the Los Angeles County where I've run for office, if you look at all the local city governments that are in trouble right now, most of them have Hispanic leadership in those cities, and they're corrupted as well. So you've got to get people also not willing to sell out. So how do you get all that together in one big package, so that you actually become credible and can gain some traction and start changing things? So I mean, it's a big story, it's a big picture challenge, but hopefully people like me don't slip through the cracks.
I'm glad you're here.
Who are willing to step up.
Yeah. I'm glad you're here, and thanks for running. Yeah. And thanks for leading off the conversation. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go to number 2, and do I have a 3, 4, and 5? Who else? 3, 4. Okay, here we go. All right, I'll let Sandra take it. She's a media person, I know her.
Actually, yeah, I'm not totally sure what I'm going to say. I have 2 things to say. One, well, I'm the co-chair along with Alex of the State Coordinating Committee, and it's really wonderful working with a young person. But we don't have it. We have over 100,000 registered Greens in California, and we don't have enough people working with the party, both at doing the day-to-day business level, which happens on a coordinating committee, which happens in our committees. I mean, Shane over there has been the co-chair of the platform committee for years, and there's barely anyone on that committee. He needs people. He does wonderful work. He needs people working with him. So almost all of our committees have lots of openings, and we need people to get involved with the party, doing party work as well as supporting candidates. Whenever I've worked on a candidate campaign, it's really hard to find the people that will support the campaigns. It's hard to find people that can donate money. I mean, when I've gone to an event with Jill and they pass the hat and someone puts $5 in the hat, and I think we expect people to run for president when we donate $5, then also, I mean, I have never considered really being a candidate because I'm the kind of person when I get upset, I cry or yell, and I don't think that's good. That's good for camp. But the teachers union of the state college board, of the community college board, came to our party a couple of months back and asked if we would run because they're finding that they're supporting people for Democrats who then turn around and support the administration instead of supporting the teachers. But they also thought we were about to switch to district elections, which we haven't done yet. And so there was a bunch of people that were supporting us, but then there were a couple of other people in the room that didn't like the idea. They were obviously progressive Democrats. And basically asked whether we'd be able to get endorsements of like the senators and the Congress people in the state, and I knew we couldn't, because we're not Democrats. But, and do we have money, which is also questionable. But when I looked at the candidates that have run in the past, they never had endorsement of those state legislatures either, but they wondered about that. So I've said in the past I'd be willing. I'm a retired teacher that I'd be willing to run for a school board if a teachers union drafted me. Right. But that's the only way I would run.
Okay. Excellent. So we're hearing a couple contributions here, and thank you, Sandra, for your service. We're hearing about the question about moving from being sort of more marginal in the way in which we approach things to being serious and becoming more polished and being ready to attract people and to let people who are coming to us to join us, right? And we're also hearing about resource questions in terms of lots of people who vote Green and support the Greens and register Greens, but not necessarily finding a way for them to do the work in the party and people not stepping forward. Go over here and then over there. I'll hold on.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to ask, or raise this question for if anybody wants to comment, is how do you, once you get elected, how do you deal with or how do you prevent yourself from becoming compromising your principles? Because I talked to there's a group of young activists who ran for office, city council, and state assembly out in Coachella, and they all ran as Democrats and won, and they did some good things. The assemblymen started out as a Green Party. They were all Green Party back when they were in college, about 20 years ago. And then they became Democrats, and then, the assemblyman got in office and co-authored a bill which allowed this big power plant to be built. And now he's saying, well, they lied to me, I'm sorry about that. But I talked to one of their aides, and I said, people want me to run for city council, but I'm not so sure I want to be having to sit there and deal with how do we get enough money for the police department. I mean, I don't care about that. But he said, well, that's me. He says, I stay behind the scenes because these guys are my brothers and I love them, but once they get in office, they change.
Right. So how do we deal with the problem of co-optation? And also you raised another problem, I think, which is that Greens are generally activists, and dealing with endless meetings over budgetary issues is not really the activist mentality. Right. All right. Hi there. I'll come over here.
Certainly, Ben.
Here we go.
Like to start off, I'm a background person also.
Great.
And I guess my comment comes to a question for you as a sociologist. And that is, my hope is that right now, Green Party is hovering around 1% of the registered voters. And to address that gentleman's question, the majority of voters are not registered to vote. So that's where, we have that 50% more to go, because my question to you is, once we hit around 2%, won't it start to trend? Won't it start to, just catch on? Because to me, that's where the hope is. It's like now we have the last 50% to go, and then it'll catch on. More and more people will see our candidates will be in the debates. And a key word that will catch those people is love-evolution, to change, love, with nonviolent love and with peace. We can stop the nuclear reactors and the weapons and the hunger and the hate and the violence, then we have a wonderful world.
So how do we get that momentum going, right?
Right.
Yeah, exactly. I love being in California too. We would never have heard that in Wisconsin, but I love California. Thank you. So excellent contributions. I had 4, and I'm going to take it back over here because I think you guys probably have some responses here on the response panel, and then we'll take it back to the to all of you.
Great, thank you. So yeah, a few responses. First, to speak about that issue of credibility. One way that I am trying to build credibility for myself as, perhaps I might run for local office in the future. And yeah, I think this is something that others have done and others can do is, and actually, I think this is something that Ruskell demonstrated really well. He is actually newly registered Green, and one of the reasons I was really excited that he decided to register Green is because he got involved with a government commission and got involved with government on that level, and was able to effectively get some real public policy to pass. So I think getting involved with those commissions on a local level is a good way to get an idea of how government works and to build credibility for yourself in the community. And from there, serve on a few commissions, get involved with some other community groups, and start by running for a local school board. At Napa last election, none of the Napa Valley Unified School Board seats were contested. there was one seat on the Napa Valley College board that was contested. So, you know, right off the bat, like, those are winnable seats. And if we can build credibility as, you know, individuals on these local government commissions and then go for these seats, you know, we're getting ourselves in the pipeline to move on to better and greater things. The other thing I wanted to speak on real quick was the point that Sanda brought up, and I definitely don't want to spend too much time talking about internal party issues at this type of a meeting. But one thing I do want to say is the meeting, so these types of events, this campaign school, this is how we are able to develop potential candidates that could run for local offices and statewide offices across California. And this is basically was organized by a committee of the Green Party of California, and most of the individuals that were serving on this committee are the same handful of people that are always stepping up and volunteering for many of the other standing groups and working committees. And I just want to, you know, give a lot of people don't want to get bogged down with, you know, internal, you know, party work and committee work. But in order for us to have an external impact, you know, that's where it happens. You know, if people aren't organizing these types of things, we're not able to have campaign schools to develop potential candidates in the future. And last, just to respond to the question about how to deal with not compromising your principles. Obviously, I served as president of the Associated Students, which is, you know, very different from a city council person or a board of supervisors, you know, let alone a state assembly person. But I think part of it is just accepting the fact that you're not going to win every vote. So, you know, all you can really do is vote the right way, and hopefully you can be a part of mobilizing enough people to apply pressure to have the vote go in, you know, your favor or the correct favor. But, you know, I think part of that is just realizing you're not going to win every time and not letting that discourage you. And beyond that, there's going to be another workshop about greens and governance, and they'll probably have some more specific examples and insights on how to deal with that question. So thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex, for the detailed responses. When you run for office, you got to know what the job is. You got to know the responsibilities, what they do. For example, in my role, we as a board, we hire a college president, or in this case, an executive, and they hire his or her staff and so on. That's how we get the faculty hired and the staff hired. Of course, we as a board have the final say on those hirings, in addition to voting on budgets and college policies. You got to make sure that the candidate knows the process. You got to also make sure that the candidate does their homework. You know, thanks to my mentor, you know, who studies all sides, I do my homework too. I study all sides. And you could even test the candidate if, for example, you could question them, what do you think of SB 241, the oil extraction tax to fund education? You got to make and I would do the homework as well. If they give you an acceptable response and a response that they did not only did their homework but also looked at all sides, then you know they're the right person for the job.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, and I do think that, yeah, knowing, like Sanda says, you know, she admits that, you know, sometimes she her response is crying or yelling, and that maybe that wouldn't fit. And I think we all have to kind of know, you know, where we do fit in. If we don't want to sit through long budget meetings, then it's probably not going to help the credibility of the party to run for an office where that's required. Because, you know, a lot of times, you know, maybe we think, okay, we're an activist, we're a firebrand, so maybe we're the head of the rallies for a candidate that sits through boring meetings, and spice up their election events and bring in people and table and motivate people. So there's a role for everybody, and I think it's matching that up. Because we do want people to know that if we win office, that we can govern. And, you know, the two things that hit us the most when we're running candidates is, well, can you win? You know, we love everything you do, but you can't win is one. So we've got to have some, you know, pick some offices where we can win so we can tell that story that we do have candidates that win, and we can win, and get that story frame out there that Greens can win, and then they can govern and they can deliver. And so I think we want to get both of those. And you heard the talking about all the complexities of how do we pull together with the way the population is and the way they get their media. How do we, get people to understand what we're working for. But I think if we use the opportunities for local races, and if it's school board or a community race, talk about the very specific issues in that community. So you don't have to have them understand corporate globalization, or you don't have to get into all of that if you're not running for U.S. president. You can talk about the very real specific issues of that race, and in a way that's materially relevant to the people in that community. If they can't get housing and they're trying to get housing, and you're talking about how you will get them housing, then you don't have to talk about everything else. And you can use very simple language and do that. And then you need to be able to deliver that. So I think we have some opportunities to, and you can tell that in a bigger frame of people losing housing nationally, globally, and do some education that way, but make it very practical for people. And then I think, that relevance will come through. And, I'm going to have to mention that we do really can use people on the committees of the state party. I just got to put a word in for that, because if everybody here in this room just did a little bit on the party structure, it would be real easy to keep this party running and really effectively. But when we're not all engaged and the people that are there are left with a little more work. And Jill spoke a lot about how important it was to staff up their committees in Massachusetts, and that really is what made a big difference in Massachusetts, of that party being able to not just be these campaigns and starting over, but really building a party, building the party so that you can support your candidates and not have to recreate the wheel over and over again.
Excellent. Thank you. A lot of good thoughts and experience there. I do want to address a couple of the questions too. I'll just take the moderator's prerogative to do that. And recognize in particular, what was your name from the United Kingdom, from the United States? What's that? Nick. Hey, Nick. In Nick's comments, we are in the U.S., and this has certainly been true in the United Kingdom as well, but I think even more so here, dealing with an electoral arena which makes the Greens into victims, right? I mean, we certainly were victimized in 2000 and after 2000. I ran the Nader campaign in Wisconsin, among other states. We had offices broken into all over the country. We had volunteers arrested. We were demonized. Our candidates were demonized, right? And then the question becomes, what do you do when you are demonized, when you are victimized, when you are treated this way? Do you internalize that victimization? Do you become angry? Angry at the world, right? Become angry at the other parties, the other people in politics, the voters who don't know what's good for them, right? Do you internalize that, or do you say, okay, we're not going to let this define us? And recognize that you have to build a majoritarian party. That if we're going to be successful, we have to be attractive. We have to be open-handed. We have to be optimistic, right? And so I guess that would be my response to that, that offering that you made, Nick, which is that's one of the things we have to do to deal with the unique challenge of being Greens operating in this electoral arena. The other thing I want to offer, and then I'm going to go back over here, is that we need to listen to the fact that we've heard from a couple people now, I think at least 3 in the last 20 minutes, who said, we need more support and participation in the party. And not just respond by joining and going to the committee meetings and becoming active and taking responsibility for the party machinery. That's the harder part, right? But also just give them a round of applause. Please, give them a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you for doing that work. Thank you for doing that work, because and this is the other thing we have to do in general. We have to find ways to reward each other for doing this work. Because I'll tell you what, in terms of this question of co-optation and also the question of getting more people to do more work, right? We don't offer a path to power in the Green Party that is easy. My congressman, He is an example of a Democrat who did cross party lines to endorse a Green in a partisan race. He endorsed me. He also endorsed my wife, Sarah, right? However, he was a member of the Progressive Party, another independent local party, many years ago when he was a local elected official. The Progressive Party and the Green Party did not have a path to Congress to offer him, or to offer Representative David Siegel in Rhode Island, or to offer, there's several members of Congress who were Green elected officials at one point, right? We don't have those kinds of rewards. So we have to offer other kinds of rewards. And that's something that I think is really, really important. I think the greatest reward we have is being here together, to know that we're part of this movement that is not only national but also global, and that we are, you know, we get to meet people like Alex here. We're just awesome, loving people, to use that word. Yeah, that's right. who make it worthwhile. You know, what's the point of living otherwise if you don't get to work with people like this? All right. All right, let's go back here. We're going to take it back for, I'll take 3 more. I've got 1, and then I saw another hand, 2, and then 3 over here. Okay. I'll hold on.
Hello, my name's Nancy Perlman. When I got elected to office in 2001 as a Green to the Los Angeles Community College District Board of Trustees, I had the most votes of any Green in the country and the largest district and population of any Green in the country. To answer the question about about co-opting, the problem is if the Greens don't support their electeds when they are in office, we cannot continue to successfully reach out and succeed in all of our programs and projects. If you read my website, I still have the 10 key values. I'm running for office again, and what am I being attacked for? 2 things. I've been a Green, and I've pushed for green sustainable programs, a $6 billion building program, the greenest in the nation, copied all over the country, and it's successful, but I'm being attacked because I'm not co-opting. So what happens when you don't co-opt? You fight for your life to keep your position.
That's right.
Because they're putting up $400,000. They already have put up $400,000 against me for my opponent versus the $20,000. So if the Greens don't get out there and tell people who to vote for and keep the people with good Green values in office, we are either on our own and for the luck of the draw win, or we are out of office and cannot continue to do our programs. So that I just wanted to answer the question. It is easy because you want to be in office and do good work and vote right and do what's needed, but it means you need the support. And I really encourage you to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your service, too. That dynamic of the party and our elected officials, it's critical to our success.
Yeah, just some things I heard. I've heard a lot of things.
I'll hold on to it.
Oh, okay. I'm David Curtis, Marin County Green. I'll be running in 2014.
Good to meet you in person, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and great work on the campaign.
Thank you.
Awesome work. I heard a lot of branding issues and presentation issues and projection issues. And I think it's really important that we're at least 2 things. One is genuine. I haven't heard that word too much. Genuine. And the other one is transparent. If we're those 2 things, we're not duopoly. And we kick their ass every time. So.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah. I think that's where we start from. That's our starting point here. I have a question or comment over here. Thank you. Stand up, maybe.
Yeah, sure.
Good.
Should I probably face this way?
Yeah, there we go. There we go. There we go. We'll come out in the aisle.
Okay. So on the No on Prop 8 campaign, I helped out in the East LA office. And what we were trying to do, not only is doing a lot of phone banking, was trying to we were doing voter registration drives to get a lot of non-registered Latino voters to register so that they could vote no on Prop 8. But we were registering them as Democrat because that seemed to be the easiest way to get them to vote no on Prop 8. So what I'm wondering is, how are we going to take back the sector of a society that I feel belongs to the Green Party, which is naturalized immigrants, LGBTQ groups, people of color, because obviously we have the gender equality, the nonviolence, the respect for diversity. How are we going to get back the group that should be rightfully with us? And they want to be with us, but once again, the whole thing of like they think we might not win and they don't want to lose the voice that they're trying to get in the door right now.
Absolutely. Excellent. Thank you. The folks who most need the Green Party and who we most need to join the Green Party, how do we make that happen? I'm going to take two more. Are there two more people here? Okay, good. That's good because it will allow us to keep on time. I'll give our response panelists a last opportunity to respond. Let's keep it quick. Then we have our last workshop block, and really want to thank everybody for your participation here. June.
Well, you know, the last question I'm just still in my head because I think that's really the biggest challenge and really trying to figure out how do we pick races that we can have a chance at winning and have a chance of actually showing that we can deliver something to the communities that we're working with. And I think we've got to identify some real places where we actually can tell that story of winning and making progress together. And maybe it's got to start on the real small community level where the money isn't so big and the challenges and the control aren't so big. So we can have those wins in smaller spaces, but then tell that story in the bigger places where then we can start building up that trust, because you know the biggest thing keeping us from getting those votes is people thinking we aren't going to be able to get the votes. And to break out of that cycle, it's the toughest cycle we've been in, you know, for a long time. And the best I can come up with is where the races are really accountable to the community and the money isn't as dominant, to get it happening there and then being able to move that story onto the bigger level.
Well, I have some friends that are you know all across the spectrum, but mostly Democrats. But what I found was there's the progressive Democrats and the good old boy Democrats. We need to inform the community about the good old boy network that's going on, that's funded by special interests like the corporations and big money donors. So we need to let the citizens know that whose interests are these elected officials serving? Those with the money or those that are supposed to stand up for your rights? And for me, I always I don't take any special interest endorsements. I take endorsements from citizens only, so that it shows that you are committed to citizens. You're not owned or bought by someone that's gonna you know vote in their way of how you should vote. You should vote with what the people elected you in office for. And to get the community, as a young lady mentioned, simple grassroots organizing, again, basics. We gotta do, again, the door-to-door precinct walk. I've done this for friends that I helped elect them to city council for, mostly progressives. That's how it's going to be done. Even if you got to make some T-shirts and signs, because I got to tell you, there's one issue that I worked on where we were outspent by $200,000 versus $12,000. It's regarding in the city of Vallejo, it's this issue called binding arbitration, where the public safety unions and the city hire a third-party arbitrator to make a decision on the public safety union's contracts. Unfortunately, in this case, 9 out of 10 times, according to the city, they've been losing out, which resulted in their exorbitant pay and benefits, $200,000 or more, plus 90% of their pensions, plus lifetime health care. We don't get that stuff as middle-class people. I don't think I'll ever get that kind of benefit. Lifetime benefits, wow. But unfortunately, how are they going to pay for that? Well, that's another question. So I was glad to work with a citizens group, you know, basic community organizing. We got to make the T-shirts, the hand-painted signs, mailers, $12,000 plus versus their $200,000 glossy ads, TV ads. But we won. It was a close vote, but we won. So we have to return to grassroots community organizing and influencing our friends and family to tell the truth of what's going on.
Thank you. And real brief, to to respond to this question about how do we let historically marginalized groups know that, you know, the Green Party is the party that truly supports them, I think one thing we can do is point to what our Green elected officials have done to support these communities. And two elected officials come to mind regarding the whole issue of gay marriage. Jason West, who was the mayor of New Paltz, he was one of the first mayors, you know, during the same time that Gavin Newsom was doing his thing to marry gay couples. And he had some charges brought against him. I believe eventually they were all dropped. He lost his bid for re-election the first time, but you know when he ran the second time, he was elected again. But you know that's something, you know, really like specific and concrete that a Green office holder is able to do to support that community. Another person who comes to mind is, I think, of Richmond. That's a sanctuary city for undocumented individuals, and the mayor of Richmond is Gail McLaughlin, who is a Green. So, you know, those are two examples right there. Another just quick example of an accomplishment that a Green office holder is able to do. It doesn't necessarily pertain to historically marginalized groups, but San Francisco was the first city in the country to ban plastic bags, and that legislation was brought forward by Ross McReamy, who was a Green Party office holder on the Board of Supervisors at the time. So I think it's really important for us to remind ourselves and to remind the public of the historic accomplishments that Green office holders have been able to accomplish and can continue to accomplish in the future if we support them. Thank you.
Excellent. And I just want to let people know that in terms of this question of the Green Party's value to people who have been left out of the political system, when you look at Green elected officials across the country, in larger cities, they are disproportionately people of color. When I say disproportionately, I mean disproportionately as compared to the Green Party activists, right? You go to a Green Party meeting in Boston or in St. Paul or in Madison, and it will be disproportionately white folks. But if you look at the history of elections in these cities, and there are other cities that tell this story too, you will see that the first Hmong elected official in Wisconsin was Shua Vang, right? A Green, ran for school board. And we've seen that in school board elections and city council elections in many cities. So what I would just say is that there is the potential for coalition politics between a party that is still, although it's changing, but still predominantly white progressives and radicals in terms of its activist base, right? And communities that also have problems in electoral politics, where you come together at the ballot box and you win, okay? I want to thank all of you for taking part in this panel. I want to thank all of you for taking part in these discussions. It's been a long day. We have one workshop block that is coming up. And in this room, we will have our workshop on messaging, media, and messaging. And in the room around the corner, room 156, is challenges and opportunities of governing green. So thank you, everybody, and a round of applause again for the organizers here.